Good afternoon, everyone. It is Friday, November the 20th, 2020. It is currently 3:48 p.m. Central Time, and I'm coming to you live from Victory Baptist Church, located here in Ovalo, Texas. And I'm just going to be very honest with you. I'm just going to be right up front. This is the last thing I want to be doing right now. All right? Of all the things I could be doing, I could think of 100 other things that I would rather do than sit here right now in this church and turn on this microphone to talk to you about COVID-19. I am tired of talking about it. I know you're probably tired of hearing about it, but we are in the middle of a very difficult situation, a situation that's impacting this church. There's a very good chance this situation is impacting your church, or at least it's a subject of conversation. It may be even a subject of great debate inside your church. I don't know what's going on. You can feel free to email me at newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com, to tell me what's going on there. But I'm tired of talking about this. I want this to be over. But you know what? In life, sometimes you don't get what you want. We're handed what we are handed, and what we have to determine is how we're going to respond to it. Are we going to respond to it in a correct way? Are we going to respond to it in a biblical, godly way? Or are we going to respond to it in an ungodly way? That's what we have to struggle to figure out what to do and how to handle ourselves. If you've been listening to my teaching on The Imitation of Christ by Thomas à Kempis, we've been working through that book. We talked about this concept in our last session, in our last episode, where we were covering, I don't even know what chapter we're on, maybe chapter 13. Whatever chapter we were on, we were talking about temptation. And what we kind of discovered, kind of what the concept that we kind of began to put forth, is that every situation contains a temptation. There's a temptation inside every situation, whether it's a positive or a negative, whether it's difficulty or whether it's all wonderful, a wonderful news and a wonderful situation. Contained in everything, there is a temptation because of there's always a something, no matter what happens, there's something contained in it that could lead us to responding to it in an incorrect way and an ungodly way. The entire COVID-19 situation has been not only a trial, yes, but again, within every trial, there's a temptation. There's a temptation there because how we respond to it. If we respond to it in a godly way, then it's a trial that may purify us. If we respond to it in an ungodly way, it becomes a temptation that can result in us falling and us in failing the temptation. Now, that still can have a ultimate positive result. I'm not going to go back and teach the entire concept, but what I want you to see is that this COVID situation, I know it's become politicized and I know it's become a subject of debate, but what we need to see as Christians is that this situation it is a temptation. It's a test. It's a challenge. And are we going to respond to this temptation in a godly way, or are we going to allow ourselves to fall into sin? Some responses to the COVID situation has to be borderline sinful just because it seems to be more about people's ego, their pride, them trying to make a point, them allowing themselves to become politically hijacked. So they're responding to it from a political perspective. And yet they may be trying to wrap it all up in a robe of fraudulent righteousness, trying to act like they're doing it for biblical reasons, but in many cases, the motivation seemed to be something contrary to that. So the last thing I want is for you, for me, for your church, for my church, for any church, for us to respond to it in an ungodly way. I want us to respond to it in the most biblical way possible. So we have to continue to talk about it, all right? So what we're going to do is I'm going to tell you kind of where we are right now. I'm going to tell you what's happening in my local area, what's happening here in this church. I mean, obviously, what's happening in this church is it's empty, all right? It's been empty. We've had some in-person services, but we're going to talk about all of that. And I'm just going to throw out some thoughts and some ideas, and I'm going to talk about something that happened in Oklahoma where you just shake your head and you're like, see, this seems to be Christians not handling it in a biblical way. And there's just I know there's so much noise. There's so much noise, and I don't want to contribute to the noise. I don't. But we've got to constantly be struggling. Some of you sent me emails telling me your struggles. How, one day you think this way about the COVID situation, and the next day you think differently. Then maybe a week later you change your mind. And I know that you're probably struggling and trying to figure out what to do. And a lot of it may be dependent on all the different, perspectives you're hearing. I mean, you've got the perspectives that, don't worry about this. It's all a fraud. It's all hoax. It's all hype. It's not really that serious. And then you've got other voices telling you something different, and trying to find, a truthful, thought out position is very difficult. And I've struggled with it as well. There are times I'm like, you know what? Let's just forget this. Let's just go back to normal, and we'll just deal with it. And then there's other parts of me going, well, no, that's not the right way to think. And I have to try to distinguish sometimes between logical, rational thinking. I'm getting all kinds of messages right now in regards to COVID. Everyone has an opinion. If you can hear my iPad right now, it's blowing up. I think sometimes you have to try to distinguish when it's your emotions doing the talking and not your thinking, right? So our emotions are never a guide of reality. They misrepresent. They can lead us into thinking something, completely different or completely wrong because it's just your emotions. So sometimes you got to separate your emotion from fact, logic, reason, and no matter how you feel, logic, reason, thinking, truth, facts, that's what you have to rely on, not the emotion. When I come here on a Sunday and I'm sitting in this empty building doing a live stream service, and I'm doing hour after hour after hour of live broadcast, and by the end of it, sometimes I'm like, what am I doing? I'm wasting my time. We just need to get back. We just need to get back to church as, in a normal way with people present. That's what we have to do, because it just doesn't feel like church. And then I have to stop myself and go, that's my emotions talking. That's my feelings because of what I'm feeling. But making a decision can't be based on just my feelings. I've got to take in facts. I've got to get evidence. I've got to think about other people. I can't just go with my feelings. So, it's a difficult time. And I know people are making decisions about what to do for the holidays. People's lives have been turned upside down. And I know churches, there's a church locally. They've made a decision to cancel all in-person services. And that pastor today was talking about the church office receiving a number of phone calls from people basically saying, we're going to find another church. If you're canceling in-person services, that's it. We're done. We're leaving. And I can't imagine what that pastor is going through today. He's losing church members. He made a decision based off what our local healthcare system is asking people to do. And he made a decision, and now people are threatening to leave his church. Now, I don't know if they're going to carry out the threat or not. And you just have to ask yourself, that's how Christians are responding now. It's everything's a fight. Everything's an argument. And I think that what is going to be revealed, you may think I'm wrong here, but I think what's ultimately going to be revealed when this is all said and done is I think what we're going to see is that Christianity at large, not every church, I think we're going to look back on this time period and that we did not respond to the temptation correctly. I think this is becoming more about ego, pride, politics, trying to make a point. Basically, you're going to hold in-person services to make a point. You're going to claim you're doing it to somehow be faithful to the Bible. But once COVID goes away, you'll be canceling services for all kinds of nonsense. But hey, you're going to use people's lives so that you can make a point. And I think we have to stop and go, what are we doing? What are we doing? So let's just, I could talk all day about this, but let's just take a step back. And I'm just going to give you I'm going to play two reports that I heard, one from last night, one from this morning. And then I've got this statement from the local hospital system here, from the Hendrick healthcare system. In Abilene, Texas, we have the Hendrick Hospital, basically Hendrick Hospital North and Hendrick Hospital South now, because the South facility used to be Abilene Regional Medical Center, but it's been bought out by the Hendrick Health System. So basically we have Hendrick Hospital North, Hendrick Hospital South, and they have yesterday they released a statement it's speaking to all the leaders in our community. And they are saying they're in a critical situation, and they're needing our help. So I'm going to read and give you an idea of what's going on here, and then just and I'm going to ask you this question: what's the Christian response to a letter like this? So I'm going to read the letter. It was sent out to leaders in the community to, hey, this is what we need from you, and I'm going to read it to you, and I'm going to tell you what my response is. And we're just going to look at this. So trust me, I don't want to be talking about this. There's a million other things, but I want to put this in the context to explain. Even though I don't want to be talking about it, I want to remind you why we're talking about it. Because the entire COVID situation, don't see it as a political thing, right? Don't see it as an attempt to take away your constitutional rights. I want you to see this as a trial, and within every trial, there is a temptation. You either respond to the trial in a correct way, and it purifies you and matures you, or you respond to the trial in an incorrect way, and it becomes a temptation that you fall to, and you end up falling into sin. This is an opportunity for the church to determine if we're going to respond in a godly way. And I think so much of the response has been very unbiblical, unloving, ungodly. It's been really, it's really like, okay, we've got this scripture and we're going to ignore all the other scriptures. This scripture says, forsake not the assembly. That's the scripture we're going to use. And we're going to ignore all the other scriptures. Like whenever you're dealing with a situation, you got to take all the biblical information into put it all in together so that you can look at the situation from a biblical context, not just one verse. And I keep seeing people address this issue, and I think it's demonstrating that we don't even know how to go to the Bible and actually be thoughtful. I mean, the Bible has a lot to say, and you can't just take one verse and say, this is the verse that's going to allow me to respond to this situation. We got to look at everything. Love for neighbor, love for your enemy, a submission to authority, all the different things that we have to take into consideration. So let's just figure out where we are, and then we'll try to. I'm going to try to give you something beneficial here. All right, here we go. Let's go to last night. Was this 5 p.m. Central Time? I think it was 5 p.m. Central Time when this aired, and you can hear everything they had to say. Let's listen carefully.
Tonight, several developing stories as we come on the air. The CDC and what they're now urging involving Thanksgiving, urging Americans not to travel. It comes as nearly 200,000 new cases and nearly 2,000 deaths reported in just the last 24 hours. And the CDC's alarming new prediction about the death toll by mid-December. Authorities in New York City and across the country taking new action. In California, issuing a new curfew tonight. Ohio's governor warning hospitalizations are reaching critical levels. Dr. Anthony Fauci at the White House podium for the first time in months, and what he said late today. And reporters asking, where is the president on this virus? And what we're now learning about a third vaccine tonight showing promise. Late today, President-elect Joe Biden warning American lives are at stake, with the president refusing to work with him on any transition, on any plan for vaccine distribution. And with Mr. Biden now approaching 80 million votes in the popular vote, he was asked about the president's continuing legal battles. Biden telling our Mary Bruce, let me choose my words here, and what he said next. The ABC News investigation tonight on the 100 hardest hit counties in the U.S. during this pandemic. The rural communities where nearly everyone knows of someone lost to this. 33 lives lost in just one community. The subway attack here in New York City, what we've learned tonight. And this evening, Prince William now breaking his silence amid the new investigation into that famous interview with Princess Diana 25 years ago. Was she tricked into doing it? And what Prince William is now saying tonight.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening, and it's great to have you with us here on a Thursday night. And we begin tonight with that new warning from the CDC, and it's blunt. They are now urging Americans not to travel this Thanksgiving. With the nation having lost more than 250,000 American lives to this, and given what they've seen in just the last 24 hours, nearly 200,000 new cases, the numbers are simply accelerating too fast, and they fear that Thanksgiving will only make this worse if we all don't pitch in. We took note of this map from the New York Times showing the nation's hotspots today, the deepest red there, but you can see this virus is all across the country. And after passing that 250,000 mark, the CDC now projects that we could see 298,000 lives lost by mid-December. Governors across the country saying this is dire, pleading for the public's help. Louisiana's governor tonight saying his state is in the third surge of this pandemic. Ohio's governor reporting hospitalizations are now at a critical state, the highest so far in this pandemic. New Hampshire imposing a statewide mask mandate. And California tonight with a new overnight curfew for much of that state. There's also news coming in tonight on a third vaccine showing promise as well. And Dr. Fauci in the White House briefing room for the first time in months late today. ABC's Whit Johnson leading us off here in New York.
Tonight, the CDC is recommending against travel this Thanksgiving, as it now forecasts another 46,000 Americans could die by December 12th, a staggering potential toll of 300,000 people. A vaccine can't come soon enough. The White House Coronavirus Task Force briefing for the first time since July. Dr. Anthony Fauci touting the effectiveness of the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines and reassuring Americans they will be safe.
So we need to put to rest any concept that this was rushed in an inappropriate way. This is really solid.
The general in charge of distribution for Operation Warp Speed promising the vaccines, if approved, will be on the move immediately.
I can look you in the face and say to you, EUA comes, 24 hours later, vaccines will be distributed out to the American people and be ready for administration.
Hospitalizations are now climbing in all 50 states, nearly 80,000 patients, a new record. ICUs hit hard in South Dakota, where new cases have surged by 400% in the last 2 months, but still no statewide mask mandate.
A lot of us are just tired of seeing the negative comments from the community, the lack of understanding of quite how serious this illness is.
And tonight, about 100 of the country's biggest hospital groups out with a new ad, begging the public to do their part and wear a mask. Healthcare workers grinding through exhaustion 8 months into the pandemic.
We know every day we come into work, it's going to be one of the worst days we've had.
Ohio reaching critical hospitalization levels. California ordering a curfew in hard-hit counties between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. Outside Oklahoma City, 13-year-old Devin Embry went from the football field to the ICU, now fighting for his life on oxygen.
Devin was one of the ones who did not want to go back to school because he was so scared of it. He wanted to play football, and he couldn't do it if he stayed at home.
In Utah, retired music teacher Grover Wilhelmsen playing his beloved violin while on a breathing machine, lifting the spirits of hospital staff before becoming too ill and requiring sedation.
That was just a remarkable scene, and Whit joins us now with Pfizer, the first vaccine we heard about. They believe 95% effective.
All right, we could go on and listen to everything, but the numbers are going through the roof. I've stated it before. We here in the United States of America, we have lost complete control of the COVID-19 situation. We are right back at about 2,000 people a day dying. If we're at 2,000 people a day dying right now, and the number of cases are still increasing dramatically, and we're breaking records, then there's a possibility that within 2 to 4 weeks will be between possibly up to 3,000 people dying a day. And that will be like, at what point? And again, I'm going to get emails from people going, 3,000 people aren't dying. That's a lie. The numbers are fake. It's all fraudulent. It's all fraudulent. Okay, look, I'm begging you. If you think it's all fraudulent, and then just go somewhere else. Start your own podcast and convince everyone that it's all a lie. Okay. While you sit there and pretend it's a lie, there's people dying. All right. And you can say they're not dying, but you go look at their families in the face when their loved one dies and tell them that they really didn't die. All right, real people are dying, and when Christians want to minimize the death of human beings, you know that the church is not handling it right. Okay, I'm sick and tired of Christians who supposedly are so pro-life, and then people are dying of a pandemic, and then we just minimize the death of human beings as if it's not significant. 2,000 people a day? On our way to 3,000 a day if things continue in the direction they're going now. Yes, thank goodness the care has gotten better and doctors have a better idea now of what to do to try to prolong life and to keep people alive. That's wonderful. And hopefully they continue to get better at treating people so that we can have fewer people die. But this is a serious situation. Over 1 million people have died from this situation in less than a year. I don't know what to tell you. That like this is a time for Christians. Look, this is a horrible situation, and the church needs to be handling this in the best way possible. But that's the report from last night. Then I woke up this morning. Was it around 5 a.m., 6 a.m., and I heard this.
COVID-19 has killed 250,000 people in this country.
The case numbers keep going up, as does the death toll.
We're in the darkest days of this pandemic.
So what's going to happen this winter?
I'm Noelle King here with Rachel Martin, and this is Up First from NPR News. In New York City, the biggest district in the country, schools are moving back online, and some parents are losing their minds.
There's just no recognition of the insurmountable burden that parents have been under for the last 7 or 8 months.
Do they have any options?
And the Trump administration is betting more than $500 million on one small company to take on the task of distributing COVID vaccines across the country. Will the investment pay off? Stay with us. We've got the news you need to start your day.
Support for NPR and the following message come from First Republic Bank. Safeguard your spending with the convenience of the redesigned First Republic mobile app. Visit firstrepublic.com/digital to learn more. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Support for this NPR podcast and the following message come from Acoustic. Acoustic is the marketing cloud that helps marketers get back to thinking bigger and connect with customers on a more human level. Whether it's moving, funny, or simply the truth, it's time to get that back. Learn more at acoustic.com.
More than 250,000 people have now died from COVID-19 in the United States.
This is a very hard thing to get your head around. It's the population of Scottsdale, Arizona. You could fill the Staples Center in Los Angeles 12 times over and still not get to 250,000. And every number is a person who had a life, who had friends or kids or siblings or parents. As of last night, 250,000 are dead. Now, back in March, Dr. Anthony Fauci predicted it could get this bad. And at the time, a lot of us thought it just seemed impossible.
And yet here we are. NPR's health correspondent Rob Stein is with us. Rob, I mean, the scale of the loss of life is hard to understand. I mean, Noelle tried to help us grapple with it. Can you take it further and help us put this into perspective?
Yeah, so Rachel, each of these new terrible milestones is so big they can start to feel incomprehensible. So I've been struggling to find a way to put such a stunning toll into some kind of context. It's hard, and it's getting close to the 291,000 Americans who died in 4 years of combat during World War II. I talked about this with Dr. Howard Markel. He's a medical historian at the University of Michigan.
There has been no experience in American history in the last century that has caused this much carnage. No war, no natural disaster, and no infectious disease pandemic, with the exception of the 1918-1919 flu pandemic. This is something quite different, I think, in the American experience.
And you know, Rachel, the CDC says the 1918 flu killed about 675,000 people in the United States. And the official death toll from the coronavirus is believed to be a gross underestimate. The true toll is probably already tens of thousands of deaths higher. And then there are so many other people who survived but suffered horrible illness, many of whom are still recovering and may never fully recover.
Right. And as you know, haven't even been captured in this data. So, I mean, what has been the reaction to this? You've been talking to doctors, epidemiologists, public health experts about this pandemic for months. What do they say about this point?
Well, they're just heartbroken by this and frustrated. When 100,000 lives were lost in May, they hoped it would be a wake-up call. And when 200,000 lives were lost in September, they hoped it would finally set off alarms like a declaration of war or something. And now here we are. Let's listen to Dr. Carlos Del Rio. He's an infectious disease expert at Emory University.
Just none of us thought it would happen. And it just makes me incredibly sad because those are not numbers, those are people, those are persons. They have names, they have families, they have friends, and the death toll is just staggering.
And, one of the most frightening things about this is if you look at what's happening, the worst could be yet to come for this country.
I mean, let's talk about that. What are the predictions?
It's just terrifying, Rachel. The virus is running rampant from coast to coast. More than 150,000 new infections are now being reported every day. More than 1,200 new deaths are being reported day after day. It's like several jumbo jets crashing every day. The U.S. could easily be plummeting towards a death toll rivaling or even surpassing the terrible 1918 flu. Here's Dr. Ashish Jha. He's the dean of the Brown University School of Public Health.
We're in the darkest days of this pandemic, and I think the next 2 months will be very, very difficult. I'm really hopeful we don't get to 500,000 deaths. It would start rivaling the kind of suffering and death we saw with the 1918 flu. And a century later, with all of the tools that we have in front of us, that would be truly just shocking and awful and unacceptable. It's not where we should be as a country.
So doctors like Jha are literally pleading with people to do what needs to be done and protect themselves and those around them, especially as we head into the holidays, so more of us can be thankful for our health on this Thanksgiving.
NPR health correspondent Rob Stein. Thank you, Rob.
You bet, Rachel.
Now, when I heard that at about 5 or 6 o'clock this morning, I almost got emotional because I've heard Christian radio talk about this pandemic. I don't know how many hours I've heard them talk about it. And every time I hear Christian radio talk about it, it's to downplay it, minimize it. It's all a hoax. This is all being exaggerated and minimizing the fact that human beings are dying. Now, you think it would be Christians on Christian radio who would be horrified that human lives created in the image of God is lost and human beings are slipping into eternity, and we would be calling for repentance and prayer and fasting. But no, Christian radio acting like, oh no, this is no big deal and these are just all people exaggerating and it's a leftist conspiracy. And it's like, why do I get more compassion about human lives being lost from NPR than I do from American Family Radio? Like something is tragic. And you have pastors standing in pulpit saying, there's no pandemic, and almost like with a smirk on their face, playing it down, mocking it. And you're like, where is the godliness in that? Where is the godliness in that? These numbers are horrifying. And it bothers me a little bit that some of these people are like, we never imagined. No, I imagined, and I felt it was going to happen because of the way Americans have responded to this. When you have half of the country who don't even believe it's real, you can't get anything accomplished. And when you have the president of the United States, I won't even give you my opinions on how he's handled this, basically playing it down at every turn. We're in trouble. And they say the next 2 months. I say all of December, all of January, and probably all of February, unless the vaccine is made available sooner rather than later. And even then, even if the vaccine is made available, say December or January, you really have to ask how many people in America are even going to get it? How many people are even going to get it? I have a report here from a Catholic bishop telling people not to get the vaccine. All right, so you're already going to have some religious institutions telling people not to. I've been listening to a podcast from a Christian for the last few nights at about 1 or 2 in the morning, basically saying, that, hey, the vaccines contain, nanorobots and they're going to take over your body and they're going to make you submit to the Antichrist. Don't get the vaccine. You got Alex Jones saying, basically the vaccine's going to try to, whatever he's saying. I don't even remember his exact words, so I won't paraphrase because I don't want to get them wrong. But you got lots of people out there making all kinds of claims about the vaccine. So a lot of people are not going to even get it. Well, okay, so just think about where we are. You got people out there who don't want to put on a mask, all right? Okay, so they don't want a lockdown, so they don't want a mask, they don't want a lockdown, they don't want social distancing, and they don't want the vaccine. So exactly what do they want? They don't want anything because they don't believe anything's actually happening. They think all those doctors are lying, all the nurses are lying, all the hospitals are lying, that they're all lying. They're all part of the great conspiracy to cause Trump to lose it looks like he's already lost the election, or it's just a matter of time. So why is the conspiracy continuing? I was told by countless people who emailed me the day after the election, as soon as Trump, it looks like he's going to lose, the virus will just magically disappear because it never existed in the first place. Okay, well, why is it continuing? Why is it seems to be getting worse and worse and worse? Why? Because Trump, at this point, having the virus continue has nothing to do with the election outcome. Now it's about the legal fights happening in court about voter fraud. So why not just make the virus go away? But they'll have some other grand conspiracy theory because it never stops. I just don't. Why aren't Christians worried about people dying? We are demonstrating that we were never pro-life. We were never pro-life. If we were pro-life, we would be going, what can we do to help preserve life? What can we do to protect people? What can we do to demonstrate a Christ-like love to people? People are getting sick and dying at an alarming rate. I can't take it. I'm really, it's almost, I've reached the point that it's almost embarrassing to be called a Christian right now. All right. And we'll talk more about that. But let me give you the letter from the Hendrick Healthcare System. Now, this is from the local area. And again, Hendricks Hospital is located in Abilene, Texas. There's a Hendrick North and a Hendrick South now. The Hendrick South is about 3 blocks from my house, maybe 4 blocks from my house. And here we go. This is a letter dated November the 19th, 2020. All right. Calling all leaders in our community. Abilene is at a critical juncture because what you do today affects what happens to our community and to our economy in 2 to 4 weeks. Now, make sure we always remember this. When numbers are going up, I continue to state the same thing. Once you see the cases start going up, the negative consequences to that always happen in about 2 to 4 weeks behind. The death toll goes up 2 to 4 weeks behind the cases going up. Hospitalizations go up 2 to 4 weeks behind the cases going up. So it's always this delay. And some people seem not to yet understand basic medicine. But yeah, that's the way it works because you get tested, then the virus starts running its course, and then either you're not going to have any major symptoms or the symptoms start getting worse and worse. And next thing you know, you're in the hospital. Next thing you know, you're on a ventilator. Next thing you know, you possibly die. That's how come there is a delay, right? So what you do today is going to determine what happens. It's going to affect what happens in our community and our economy in 2 to 4 weeks. Hendricks, this is our hospital here in the Abilene, Texas, has that means 0 open ICU beds in Abilene or Brownwood. There is no additional capacity. So here in Abilene, Texas, there is no intensive care unit beds available here or in Brownwood. None. There is no additional capacity. None. 0. Now, that's what I've continued to say. I get so tired of people saying, well, look at the death rates going up. What are the hospitalizations? If the hospitalizations are going up, then Look, if you don't care what happens to you, I've heard some Christians saying, I believe in Jesus. I don't care what happens to me. Okay, if you're telling me that if you get sick, you're just not going to go to the hospital and you're not going to take up the doctor's time, you're not going to take up the hospital bed, okay, then fine. You go out and get it and you live with it and you determine what happens to you. But the people out there saying they don't care, and then when all of a sudden they're like, I can't catch my breath. What do? They call 911 and they go take up that hospital bed. While you're running around saying you don't believe in it and you're going to live faith over fear and you don't care, then the next thing you know, when it all starts falling apart, you take up the hospital bed that someone else may need. See, it's not about you. It's about other people. Put others before yourself. Love others. Love your neighbor as yourself. Okay, over and over, all these biblical, love your neighbor, love your enemy. All these commandments in Scripture. See, if you get it and you're asymptomatic, but you transfer it to someone else and then they have to take up a hospital bed, guess what? That puts the whole community at risk, because if there's no ICU beds, then what happens to someone who needs intensive care? They have to either be transported somewhere else. Well, if they're transported somewhere else, what happens when that system is overwhelmed? Then people can't receive the care they need. And if they can't receive the care they need, that puts people at risk, not dying from COVID, but dying from other medical issues because they cannot receive the care they need. That should not happen in a country like ours. We're not a third world nation. We should be able to figure this stuff out. And for Christians, the thing that should motivate us is love for others. Love for others. That's why Christianity is all about giving up your rights for the benefits of others. The Bible is about that. Hey, if eating meat causes someone to stumble, you don't eat meat, right? You don't take someone to court. As Christians, you don't do that. You may allow yourself to be defrauded because it's not about you. It's about God's glory. It's about doing what's right. There's a million other issues that come into play for the Christian. But let me read this letter again. Abilene is at a critical juncture because what you do today affects what happens to our community and to our economy in 2 to 4 weeks. Hendrick has no open ICU beds in Abilene or Brownwood. There is no additional capacity. Hendrick has already started postponing elective procedures, including heart and brain surgeries, to preserve capacity for other critically ill patients. So they're literally stopping elective procedures, including heart and brain surgeries. Hey, we can't do that because they have to preserve capacity for other critically ill patients. The unthinkable has happened. And we are on the trajectory to reach the level that will trigger a shutdown of our economy by the state within the next 2 weeks. All right? We have reached a critical stage where everything's going to be shut down. And then when everything gets shut down, everyone's going to get mad. Well, guess what? You can't get mad that everything got shut down is if we did not do what was necessary to prevent that. And you don't want to wear a mask because that's your constitutional right. Yeah, because you don't care about anybody else but yourself and your rights. Right? So you don't want to wear a mask. You don't want a vaccine. You don't want a social distance. You don't want to do anything. You just want to and I've heard Christians literally say these words, we're just going to have to live with it because you don't care how many people die. Well, I guess we just got to live with abortion, right? So stop fighting it, right? We just got to live with it. It's like people don't want a lockdown. People don't want a mask. People don't want a vaccine. People don't want a social distance. People don't want anything. They just want to do what they want, and they don't care about the consequences. Where is the Christian mentality in that? And if I hear another Christian tell me, the only reason the numbers are going up is because testing's going up. Okay. The testing doesn't create COVID in the community. Testing simply reveals that it's there. So yes, if you don't do testing, the numbers may not go up, but that doesn't mean that the virus is not in the community and people aren't going to the hospital because they can't breathe. It just means you don't know that it's there. Okay. Testing just reveals what is currently present. It doesn't create it. It's almost like, hey, if we don't test, the numbers will be down and everything will be good. No, people will still have it. People will still have it. All right. I don't understand. Like then the virus will still be spreading. People will still be getting sick. People will still need hospitalization, and they will still be spreading it because nobody will know. You test to find out what's actually going on. I continue to hear Christians say some of the most their comments demonstrate they have no understanding of basic medicine, no understanding of how a pandemic works. They lack a complete understanding, but they say it in the most dogmatic way, like they've got it all figured out, while people in the meantime are dying. And the thing they don't seem to demonstrate is any concern or compassion. Look, if we don't even have compassion for people dying, then you know what? Let's just say Christianity is no longer pro-life. Let's just remove that title, because clearly we only are pro-life when we want to be. You know, hey, we're pro-life. Oh, but we'll support the first. Anytime we can go to war and blow up another country, we'll support that as fast as you can. It's like, it's crazy. So the unthinkable has happened. All right. We are experiencing. This is what we're saying. We are experiencing a rise of COVID-19 cases in our community. All right. Which unfortunately means we'll suffer more deaths of our friends, family, and neighbors. Experience has shown that half of COVID-19 patients who are placed on a ventilator will die. That's what half of the patients placed on a ventilator, they're going to die. 100 get put on a ventilator, 50 are going to die. That's not. So you want to avoid being on a ventilator. Well, you know how you can avoid ever being on a ventilator is doing everything you can to avoid getting it and doing everything you can avoid in giving it. You don't want to get it. You don't want to give it because you don't want someone to end up on a ventilator and die because of the gift you gave them, because you're more worried about your rights than their life. Today, 101 COVID-19 patients are hospitalized in Abilene. When 145 COVID-19 patients are hospitalized, it will trigger the state to roll back business occupancy levels, therefore crippling our economy. And if at the current rate of spread in our community, we'll reach 145 hospitalized patients within 10 days if we as community leaders do not take concrete action now. So we've got 10 days to try to prevent this. 10 days to prevent it. But guess what? You go anywhere in Abilene right now, people walking around no mask, they could care less. I had to go to Best Buy to return something the other day. Did not want to. I had my mask on. And I'm walking up to the door and there's a person in front of me. Now there's signs everywhere. Do not enter the store without a mask. Do not enter the store without a mask, right? There's signs everywhere, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go right to the customer, just hand in the bag, get my money back and get out of here, right? I didn't even want to go, but I needed to return it because I wanted my money back. All right. And this is the only way I could pull this off. So I went in, made sure, hand sanitizer before I walked in, hand sanitizer before I walked out. I did everything. I tried to stay as far away from people as possible. I did everything I could. I've tried to avoid going anywhere. And this is just one of those situations I felt I had no choice. But the person in front of me doesn't have a mask. He sees all the signs. He walks in and the person standing there when they walk in, he says, "Hey, sir, you need a mask." And the person says, and I cannot repeat the words, but let's just say it started with an F. All right. That's what he said. And he just walked right on in. And I just wanted to go, I wanted to start screaming, and part of me was, I already felt guilty that I was even going because I did not necessarily wanted to go. I did not necessarily want to go into the store. So, that's what we're getting. Now, if obviously many Christians would not use that language, but many Christians have the same mentality, just won't use that kind of language. But that's where we are. We're in this community. We're in a bad situation, right? To protect what we must hold dear, our children, our places of worship, our businesses, every one of you must do your part. So now here's the hospital saying, look, we need you to do your part, right? We need you to do your part. Here's what they ask. Enforce the mask mandate. Wear a mask over your nose. Again, please, if I see another person wearing a mask incorrectly, I'm going to scream. Please wear the mask correctly. Wear a mask over your nose and mouth when inside and outdoors when you cannot maintain a 6 feet of social distance. Businesses require that all employees and all patrons wear masks. Cancel all non-essential events. Cancel all gatherings of more than 10 people. These include holiday parties, celebration and events, indoor sporting events, outdoor sporting events where spectators cannot maintain social distancing, concession stands, indoor activities, especially those with singing, including concerts. If masks are not mandatory, go virtual. Use technology to your advantage and go virtual for events and gatherings. You have an important role to play. Be socially accountable. With the holidays approaching, we need you to be socially accountable for your actions. What you do today affects our community 2 weeks from now. Think of a season of sacrifice. Cancel all non-essential events. We cannot wait until Thanksgiving to react to the climbing numbers in our community. Your actions can help us get to 2021 safely. Then there's a light at the end of the tunnel with a vaccine that has proven efficacy. Hendrick is already registered as a vaccination provider and is making plans to lead the vaccination process for our community. It's time for leaders to stop saying what you cannot do. Now is the time for leaders to say what you will do. The hospital is not the front line. You are the front line. Help us save life, save our economy. Signed, and then they have all these people who've signed it, doctors, nurses, all kinds of people who have signed the document. They're not the front. The hospital is not the front line. The key is, the goal in a pandemic is to keep people from going to the hospital. That's what we have to do. So here's what I'm doing. We're going to go back to just, online services again, at a minimum of 2 weeks. I don't want to do it. We've been having just a Sunday morning service, but we're going to stop that again. We're going to go back to online for our protection. One of the members of my church, who's a first responder, who's a fireman, he called me last night telling me what he's seeing, how many cases they're going to that are COVID related. And he was saying, look, even if you have an in-person service, I'm not going to come back right now because, I'm out in it. And you know what? I appreciate that. That was someone being godly, being thoughtful, thinking of others above himself. And I appreciate that kind of godliness. And so I look, and there may be people, I hope there's no one in my church who disagrees with me, but this is look, when the community says, please do what you can, then we've got to do what we can. We have to be willing to do what we can. All right, we have to. I don't like it. I don't want it, but it's what we're going to do. Now, obviously, I'm going to try to increase the amount of teaching I'm giving virtually. I'm going to try to increase the number of live broadcasts. I'm going to try to do everything I can to pour my heart into teaching, even though at times it feels like I'm wasting my time. Even though at times it feels like it's a vain, meaningless exercise, sitting here in this empty building, talking to a microphone, I'm going to do everything I can to provide the teaching and to inform you, commentary, teaching, devotion, sermons, Bible study lecture, everything I can do, giving you Bible study exercises to give you things to do. I'm going to do everything in my power. To the members of Victory Baptist Church, we do have an Advent study guide to give you something to work together on. If you have not received your copy, email, you can call me at the house or email me, and you can find a time to come by to the house and I can take it out to you. I'll put a mask on, bring it out to your car, and we'll get you a copy. So I know there's some families who have not received theirs because they were not at church on Sunday. So please get your copy and utilize that for your family's spiritual nourishment and food. And we were going to try to do Wednesday before Thanksgiving to at least partake in the Lord's Supper. I found a way to be able to try to do that in the safest way possible, but now we're not going to risk it because the community is in danger. And so we have to be willing to do what we can. We're going to get back together as soon as we can, but we're going to be thoughtful. We're going to be respectful. And look, I don't like it. I don't like this. But here's the way I see it. I would cancel. We've canceled services for inclement weather when we've had an ice storm. We've done it for that. If there was a fire right now, if there was a fire here in Ovalo, and it was headed towards this church, and I got the call on a Sunday morning or a Sunday night or a Wednesday, and they said, hey, there's danger that your church could, catch on fire, I would cancel services. Okay, we try not to cancel services. We don't cancel services for fellowships. We don't cancel our church services for activities. We don't cancel our church. We don't cancel services if it falls on a holiday. In other words, I don't care if it's if it falls on the 4th of July. I don't care if if it falls on a Christmas. I think it's even we don't cancel services. We try not to cancel services for anything. Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday. We don't try to cancel for any reason. But here we have to be willing to care about other people and not ourselves. And this has nothing to do with what the government says. I want to make that very clear. I'm not doing this because here the healthcare system is asking for our help. This is about looking at the situation and going, as a Christian, what's the best thing we can do to demonstrate a love for people, not only a love for all the people who are members of the church, for the members for people outside of this church, not members outside of the church, for people outside of the church and in our community. And it's tough right now. I don't like it. And I plead with not only the members of my church, but people who, whatever church, don't do what people were doing today to the pastor in Abilene, who they were calling and saying, you're going to close everything down. I'm leaving your church. Can you just set aside that mentality until this is over? Like, just stay unified now. Like, sometimes in the midst of a crisis, in the military, this kind of a common idea. Like in the military, in the midst of a crisis, sometimes it's time to be quiet and follow orders, right? And then after everything is over, then you can articulate your displeasure or your disagreement with something. But there's a time to just follow order. There's a time to follow the leader and to support and maintain unity for the betterment of the organization. Well, shouldn't Christians, as the body of Christ and as the bride of Christ, shouldn't we work together right now and encourage and bear one another's burden and try to help? But no, this is where people abandon ship. Done, out. You didn't do church the way I would have done it. And so I'm leaving. So I'm going to go find a church that does it my way. Yeah, because it's always about you. That's the one thing I've gotten so tired of as a pastor, is when you always get that call and someone's got a complaint, and it's always, look, if you boil their complaints down, it's always because you didn't do church their way. And if you don't do it their way, they hit the highway so they can go find someone that will do it their way. It's always their way, their way, their way, their way. It can't always be your way. You're supposed to have learned that like in kindergarten, right? But I guess adults in churches still haven't figured that. Like it makes me mad that any church right now is experiencing that. When I heard the stories today about what's happening in this, the office for this big church in Abilene is getting phone calls from people saying we're going to leave, I was just like, that can't be happening. What Christian would do that to their pastor? But they don't care about their pastor. They don't care about anything but themselves. We need unity. We need support. We need to bear one another's burden. This is a difficult time for everyone. But here's the thing. People are dying. People are dying. Now, if you want to live in denial and pretend that it's not happening, then go ahead. I mean, go ahead. There's an entire conspiratorial world that will welcome you with open arms. Go there. Let the conspiracy theorists be your new church. I've heard it all before. Remember during the Obama administration, we were all about to be, we remember all the conspiracy theorists telling that FEMA camps were being ready and we were all going to be placed inside FEMA camps. And they ordered all these body bags because they were going to start slaughtering people and killing people. I heard a podcast the other night, a Christian podcast, saying they have guillotines on trains, on train cars right now, and they're ready to start chopping off the heads of Christians. It's like, no matter what, the conspiracy theories, and whenever the conspiracy theories don't happen, they just move on to the next one. They never stop. This is the time. Look, this is the time to put away your crazy thinking and go, man, this is pretty serious. This is a bad situation. So please pray. Please do what we can, and I'm going to do whatever I can. And this is not just, this is for anyone out there. Look, I don't know what's going on in your life right now. I don't know if you're facing economic hardship because of this. You may be getting ready to face economic hardship, especially if everything leads to another lockdown or a lockdown, at least in your community. Whatever your needs are, let me know. Prayer, we can pray. If there's spiritual needs, if you need more spiritual, food, if you need, just tell me and I will do everything I can to try to provide that. But it's a frustrating situation, but that's where we are. That's where look, this is the last thing I want to talk about. This is the last thing I want to talk about. But it's exactly where we are right now. That's where we are. And I will argue that the next 2 months, December, January, at a minimum, it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. I do not see it getting any better. I see it getting worse. I think the numbers are going to continue to increase. And we haven't even really started seeing how the effects of the flu may start playing in all of this. Haven't seen any numbers about once the flu reaches its max, power during this time, and then we have COVID-19 on it. I don't think we've had any areas really hit with any major winter storms yet either. So there's a lot of factors right now that I think are just kind of waiting. And I think the next 2 months are going to be bad, really bad. And I think we're going to have a lot of places go back to lockdown. And I know some Christians out there are going to say, we're going to fight it. We're not going to listen. We're going to do whatever we want. Okay, if you want to use this opportunity to make a point, you go make your point. I'm not here to make a point. I'm here to try to preserve life. That's what I'm going to try to do, and I'm going to use technology to still preach the Word of God. And I'm going to use I'll look for every opportunity to have in-person services, and when I do, I'm going to try to do them in the safest way possible. I'm going to try my best to do them in the safest way possible. But you'll have some people are like, if you force a mask, I'm not even coming to church. Because it's about you again. It's about you. Why does everything have to be about you? That's what COVID-19 is revealing. It's revealing how arrogant we are and how much we think it's about us and how much you're willing to lay down rights and sacrifice for the good of other people. That's what it's revealing. When you say, hey, we need you to wear, if you make me wear a mask, I'm not coming to church. Okay, yeah, right. Because it's about you. It's about you. Yeah, I think the church needs to do a lot of repenting right now. A lot of repenting. All right. And so we'll have to see. Oh, and I'll tell you, I got some information being sent to me in regards to a situation in Oklahoma. I won't get to it in this episode, but we may talk about it in a separate episode, because right now the goal here was to kind of tell you where we are, what we're doing, where we're going, and try to offer some challenges. And now you can give me your thoughts. newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. That's newsif@yahoo.com. All right, I'll stop right there for now. God bless.